The Orlando bubble was neither an easy plan to come up with nor a pleasing experience for those who participated in it. But still, for 22 of the NBA's 30 teams, it was an opportunity to get a better idea of where they were standing and the things they need to improve on. So now, with the longest season in league history in the books, and the upcoming season still surrounded with uncertainty, the association is focusing on what would be the next step during a normal offseason, the draft ceremony. However, given that most things have been everything but normal in 2020, this year's draft will see a few changes to adapt to the new circumstances that could impact the future of some of the league's prospects as well as that of the franchises that decide to select them. Welcome to Courtside. Today we'll take a look at how the draft might end up looking and who are some of the players that should be joining an NBA team sooner rather than later. Just like every year since 1976, the 2020 draft was originally scheduled to take place in the month of June. But as the coronavirus pandemic reached the United States and the season was suspended, the event was postponed along with most of the rest of the league's key dates. After a few months of uncertainty and as the league worked on a plan to finish the season, it was announced that the draft was expected to take place on October 16th before being pushed back again to November 18th. At the moment, the league warned the date might be subject to change as circumstances warrant. However, there haven't been any indications or plans to push it back even further. So if everything goes on as planned, the ceremony should take place in just a few weeks. Therefore, this will be the latest that a draft has taken place. But that will not be the only difference from previous years. One of the most important parts of the scouting process is the draft combine, which provides teams with a chance to evaluate and interview multiple prospects in person. Usually, the event takes place in Chicago, and a large number of people participate in it. But the current circumstances forced the league to take a different approach. This time around, the prospects had to approach their nearest NBA market to undergo testing and were recorded on video while performing multiple drills. Then that information was distributed to the team so they could have a better idea of the current condition of the potential players. The process was complemented with online interviews, and teams will also have the opportunity to conduct up to 10 in-person interviews with the prospects of their interest. Aside from the combine, the other major change that's expected in this year's draft is the format of the event. Instead of the usual ceremony in which prospects, fans, and the media participate, the draft will be held via video conferencing. To date, the league hasn't informed the time the event will take place at nor the specific format it will use. However, it will probably be something similar to what the WNBA and NHL did in recent weeks. Last but not least, the financial situation in the league may impact the decision some teams could make regarding the draft, given that it's still not clear what the salary cap will be for the upcoming season, which means teams don't know how much they'll be able to spend on free agents. If the cap suffered a significant reduction, some teams could be forced to let some of their players go, especially those who are located in a smaller market. Free agents could also be forced to take less money than they originally expected to. However, while the league has not provided information in this regard yet, multiple reports suggest the cap for the upcoming season should be close to what it was for the last season, meaning that most teams and players should be able to operate as they would do in a normal offseason. But now, having described the logistical aspect of the draft, we'll focus on the basketball-related moves that teams could end up making to try to improve their rosters. The first thing that comes to my mind when looking at this year's draft class is the uncertainty that surrounds some of the young players, as most of them were in the middle of their college season before the pandemic forced the NCAA into canceling all major basketball events, including March Madness and multiple conference tournaments. Thus, with a few exceptions, most of this year's prospects will have spent at least 8 months without playing competitive basketball by the time they hear their names called during the draft ceremony, and will probably be close to a year without playing by the time next season begins. That makes the decision-making harder for front offices, given there was no clear top prospect before the college season was canceled, and scouts have been unable to watch them play in the last months. So, while there's been clarity in recent years in who the best players in each class are, and there was even a well-established top 3 in 2019 with Zion Williamson, Ja Morant, and RJ Barrett, and in 2017 with Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, and Jason Tatum, things aren't so easy this time around. By taking a look at a couple of mock drafts, it's easy to see that the one thing in which all people agree is that nobody agrees on anything, as some consider a player should go as high as a number 1, while others believe that the same player could fall out of the top 5. Then to make things even more complicated, there's the fact that the owners of the first 2 picks, the Minnesota Timberwolves and Golden State Warriors, respectively, might not even be interested in selecting a top prospect. As we all know by now, the Warriors will look to regain their status as championship contenders in the following season after injuries took them out of the playoffs despite having reached the previous 5 NBA Finals. The Wolves, on the other hand, will be looking to add some solid pieces around their all-star duo of Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell to put themselves in the run for a playoff berth in the coming season. And while it's true that a young player could help both of these teams in the long run, they'd probably prefer trading their picks for a veteran player that could help them win games immediately. But regardless of what the Warriors and the Wolves end up doing, we can observe the list of available prospects and how their stocks have moved in the last few months to reach a couple of conclusions. While there's not a clear consensus on who the best players in this class are, there are 3 names that will often be found around the top of most mock drafts: Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, and James Wiseman. Among the three, Edwards, considered as one of the most explosive players in his class, has been slowly but steadily moving up to number 1 on mock drafts, and if Minnesota decided to keep their pick, he could be a good complement to Cat and D'Angelo. LaMelo, the youngest of the Ball brothers, is distributed pretty evenly among the top 3 spots despite being regarded as arguably the player with the greatest potential in his class. Still, even though no one questions his immense talent, there are many doubts regarding some off-court issues that might come with him, such as having to deal with LeVar Ball. Wiseman rounds out the top 3 as the best center in his class. However, his position might very well be what limits him from being selected with the first 2 picks. If Minnesota and Golden State keep their picks, it's hard to see any of them drafting a center, considering the Wolves already have Towns and the Warriors usually play their best without a traditional center. Still, there are no doubts that he's one of the most talented prospects of the year, and if the Hornets manage to land him, he could make a great duo with Devontae Graham while also filling a need for the team in his position. And outside the top 3, there's a good number of players that show up in most mock drafts, and despite often being in different spots, it's safe to say they should be selected as lottery picks. Among these prospects, we can find Obi Toppin, Deni Avdija, Onyeka Okongwu, Isaac Okoro, Tyrese Halliburton, Killian Hayes, Patrick Williams, and Devin Vassell. Most of these players have had very interesting careers so far and could turn into solid players if they fall in the right situation. Also, if we've learned something over the last few years, it's that one of them may probably turn into the next Tyler Hero-like player who ends up looking like the steal of his class after being selected too low. However, even while it seems like most of their names are finally starting to fall in a safe place, the remaining weeks between now and draft night might be enough to make a few changes on this list. After all, the upcoming in-person interviews could end up being a game changer for a few teams, and if there's a year where anything can happen, it's 2020. Still, it seems safe to say that November 18th might end up being an interesting day for the future of the league. And now, aside from who ends up selected with the first pick, the biggest question remaining is, when will they get the chance to make their professional debuts? We already know the league isn't making plans to make a winter version of the Summer League, which means that we could have to wait until the start of next season to see these young players in action. Sadly, we still don't know when that may be or even when free agency will take place. At the moment, multiple reports are indicating that free agency could start around December 1st and the regular season could begin on Martin Luther King Day. However, until the league confirms or denies that information, there's no way of knowing when we'll be able to see more NBA games or all of these prospects take the floor. But until we get there, we'll make sure to keep you up to date with all the news regarding the draft and a free agency period that could be key in unlocking the potential of many teams. So let's sum it up. The upcoming draft ceremony will be the league's next step in the process of adaptation of what may end up being an even stranger NBA season than the one that just finished. But it will also be the first step in the career of many of the players who could turn into the future stars of the league. And while the order in which those players are selected, and even the teams that end up choosing them, are not yet completely clear, it's safe to say that at least a couple of them will have some of the most interesting stories to tell in the coming years. But now, what are your thoughts on the way the upcoming draft is looking so far? Who would you take with the first overall pick? Let us know in the comment section. We hope you've enjoyed today's video, and if you did, remember to give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more NBA content. We are Courtside.